Welcome. I would like to welcome everyone present to the virtual public hearing of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises. This is the committee's first hearing with stakeholders pursuant to the inquiry into the operations of the National Maintenance Training and Security Company Limited, better known as MTS, including a focus on the maintenance of schools and the measures implemented to preserve operational efficiency in the context of the COVID-19 safety requirements. I would just like to remind everyone that this is a virtual meeting and certain guidelines will apply, including please making sure that you mute your microphone when you're speaking, so that will help keep background noise to a minimum, and ensure that notifications from your cell phone or any other electronic devices are either muted or on silent during the course of the meeting. We have with us today the National Maintenance Training and Security Company Limited, representatives from the Ministry of Public Utilities, and representatives from the Ministry of Finance Investments Division. Before I ask the stakeholders to introduce themselves, may I first invite our committee members to introduce themselves, please.
Good morning, all. Laura Lizamali Singh, committee member.
Good morning. Wade Mark, member.
Good morning. Sorry, you go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Adrian. Good morning, Lieutenant and Darcy, member.
Good morning, Adrian Leon's member.
And may I thank you all. Member Cummings?
He'll be back with us in 10 minutes, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. May I also invite the Secretariat support team to introduce themselves? We have Mr. Brian Caesar, who is our secretary, and we have Ms. Crystal Gittins, our research assistant. Okay, so what are the objectives of today's inquiry? The objectives are, in summary, to ascertain to what extent MTS is achieving its mandate, to obtain an update on the maintenance of schools by MTS, to assess MTS's operations during the COVID-19 pandemic, and to determine to what extent MTS adheres to the framework for operations as outlined in the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual. It also is an opportunity today for MTS to share with us and the national community some of the challenges that they're facing, some of the concerns they might have, and recommendations for consideration. May I now invite members of the various representatives and the company to please introduce themselves, starting with MTS.
Good morning, I'm Chairman Jacqueline Lazarus, and I am Chairman of the Maintenance Training and Security Company.
Good morning, my name is Lennox Ratan Singh, Chief Executive Officer.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Richard Ferguson, Chief Financial Officer, MTS.
Good morning, Chair Adila Ilahi, Corporate Secretary, Legal Advisor, MTS.
Thank you. I believe. Yes, I believe we also have a. Sorry. Yes, we have some others. If you could also introduce yourselves, please.
Yes, good morning, Chair. Sherwin Gosain, Divisional Manager Marketing, MTS.
Good morning, Alana Hussein. Go ahead, Christopher.
Good morning, Chair. Christopher Lackrudge, Construction Operation Manager.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Alana Hussein, Divisional Manager of Human Resources.
Thank you very much. Now from the Ministry of Public Utilities and then Ministry of Finance, please.
Good morning, Chair members. All Nicolette Duke, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Public Utilities.
Good morning, all. Aline Colors, Director, Economic Research, Policy and Planning.
That's it. Minister of Finance, please.
Good morning, Chair. Ryan Maraj, Senior Business Analyst, Investment Division, Ministry of Finance.
Good morning, Sharon Mohammed, Director, Agro-Based Manufacturing Services Sector, Investment Division.
Thank you. And welcome to all again. So may I now invite the following officials to make brief opening remarks in this order. Ms. Lazarus, the chairman, Mr. Ratan Singh, Ms. Duke, and then Ms. Mohammed, starting with Ms. Lazarus. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Chairman, Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises, Senator Anthony Vera, members of the JSC, members of the public, good morning. It is my pleasure to introduce to the committee the National Maintenance Training and Security Company Limited, of which I have been the chairman of the board of directors for the past 6 years. For 42 years, MTS has been tasked with maintaining and securing schools of this country, and we have done so with pride and diligence. Over that time, we have expanded our services to wider public sector. We have developed a reputation for having employees that provide an exceptional and essential service to this nation. As chairman, I am proud to have carried out that noble tradition with the support of the hard work of the board, the chief executive officer, the executive, and our exceptional and devoted staff at MTS. The last 5 years have been difficult, and this was so exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. We faced our challenges head on. We took a positive approach in handling the pandemic as an essential service in a pandemic where our employees have continued to perform their services to our clients while others were working from home. It is this commitment that makes MTS a leader and forward thinker in securing our nation and our communities that we serve. This is the heart of MTS. We are especially proud of our achievements over the past few years, despite limited and scarce resources. But through prudent management and leadership, we have survived and continue to give the services that is expected of us. Our most recently approved strategic plan for the period 2022 to 2026 aims to address our challenges and create a path forward for the company to ensure that we remain relevant to the needs of our stakeholders without being a burden. We look forward to continuing to serve our nation by staying true to our core values while always seeking to improve our technologies and efficiencies and our productivity. We hope to achieve this through digitalization, which will raise the bar even higher to help us do better, provide more value, and deliver the quality service that our nation, that our client expect and our nation deserves. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Chairman. CEO Ratan Singh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's really an honor and a privilege to speak on behalf of MTS at this JSC. After 42 years, MTS have made significant strides, moving from 1 client to now 90, moving from 9 locations to now 900 locations, interacting with approximately 400 persons in the country to now interacting with over 300,000 persons in the country. We take pride in moving our revenue from approximately $17 million to now $550 million. An employee base, which we started off on with 300 employees, to now approximately 6,600 employees. I must say, we might be one of the largest state enterprises in terms of employment in Trinidad and Tobago. And on that note, we train our personnel in the security fields, especially that become the country's firemen and policemen and coast guards. We are particularly proud, Mr. Chairman and members, of our corporate governance. We have our audited financial statements completed for the year December 30th, 2020, and we have already started 2021. We continue to put on time our annual administrative reports. We continue to put on time our reports with the Securities Exchange Commission. And we have just completed our new strategic plan for the period 2022 to 2026. We will probably elaborate more on that later on. We continue to provide to Trinidad and Tobago human service, national service for security, janitorial maintenance, agribusiness, training, project management, not only for the schools, but several businesses and ministries throughout Trinidad and Tobago. So much so that we are into critical buildings, which we like to call mission critical. And that's why we keep our recruitment process very tight, because it has implications for national security in Trinidad and Tobago. The chairman would have already spoken about our effectiveness during the pandemic. A lot of work have been done during the pandemic, and I think the literature will show when we write it and send it off to our line ministry and other personnel that we would have found the formula. While there was no roadmap in dealing with the pandemic, we would have found the formula in executing our services to every single one of our clients. In the year 2018, the Ministry of Education would have contracted with us to increase our project management capacity, capabilities with the school repair. From 2018 to present, we have repaired over 1,400 projects in the Ministry of Education. And I dare say, during our time, not one school was closed. We were able to do everything on time and within budget. A lot more can be said later on, Mr. Chairman. Those are just some introductory remarks from MTS.
Thank you very much, CEO. May I invite Ms. Nicolette Duke, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Public Utilities, to say a few words.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning to the representatives from MTS and the Ministry of Finance. We at the Ministry of Public Utilities, thank you for this opportunity to join this discussion on the operations of MTS. At the Ministry, we are especially proud of MTS's ability to really focus on their mandate and deliver on those things that have been charged to their responsibility. We are also acutely aware that MTS is challenged in terms of its receipts from public agencies, and this is something that we continue to support and work with them on to see how we can impact this in a positive way. So we look forward to the discussions today and for the recommendations that will come forward from all the stakeholders gathered here, so that at the end, MTS will continue to exceed the expectations of its clients and serve the citizenry with continued excellence. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative from the Ministry of Finance, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Chairman, members, representative of MTS and the Ministry of Public Utilities. I wish to advise the Investment Division of the Ministry of Finance, which is responsible for executing the investment policy as prescribed by the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. The division acts on behalf of the Minister of Finance, Corporation Zone, and carries out the corporate function. This includes providing oversight and monitoring of state enterprises, which includes MTS. Additionally, the division represents the Minister of Finance at shareholders' meetings, establishes new enterprises, and pursues the rationalization of the government equity holdings in the state enterprises sector. We look forward to today's discussion, and I thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. Well, if I may begin, I know our members have some questions that they would like to follow up on. For myself, I will have basically two lines of inquiry, which has to do with the receivables and money on the road, and then challenges that face MTS as a security company. But let me start off, first of all, echoing what the Ministry of Public Utilities have said. They said that they're proud of MTS's abilities to focus on its mandate, and they see MTS and they hope that MTS will continue to excel. When I went through the submissions and the papers, and I also made some inquiries on my own, the impression that I have is that MTS is doing a very good job. A very good job, and at least as best as it can in the circumstances. So if I can put on the record my compliments to the MTS board and staff, and some of your achievements that leapt out at me. MTS is a major employer in this country. At least 6,600 people. MTS is fully compliant with its statutory obligations. PAYE, NIS. Contrary to popular belief, MTS is self-supporting. It gets no subventions from the government. MTS is up to date with its financial statements. MTS does not owe money to any state agency. In fact, it's the opposite. The company is saddled with substantial sums owed by government and state agencies. And notwithstanding the challenges, MTS has been able to compete one-on-one with the other security companies and firms in the private sector. So, well done, good job. And if I may start the ball rolling, I would like to speak about some of the financial challenges before handing over to my other members. Because it was recognized by the Ministry of Public Utilities that they are aware of the challenges regarding receipts from public agencies. MTS earns an annual revenue of $540 million. $540 million. Yet, it has lost personnel because salaries couldn't be paid. It has lost contracts due to non-payment by clients. And we're talking about the government clients. It has seen contractors reduce their workforce because of tardy payment. And they can't get an up-to-date property valuation because of the current cash flow situation. Yet you're earning $540 million. The company is paying its bills. It does not owe government and state agencies. But government and state agencies owe over $600 million. Well, that's a lot of money on the road. And it means you're almost operating with one hand tied behind your back. So I would like to hear how it is that you could be earning $540 million per annum and yet be having these financial problems. Is it that the money goes into the consolidated fund and you depend on drawdowns? Is it solely because the money earned relates to unpaid bills and invoices for services performed? Are there any other reasons? If I can hear from members.
So, Mr. Chairman, I will endeavor to give some answers to that. So our revenue, as you said, is about $550 million per annum. We invoice our clients approximately $42 million a month. And all our clients are clients because of tendering bidding processes. So although they're in government, we would have bid for these jobs and we would have won these jobs. We have a receivable challenge of over $600 million. And this matter has escalated over the last few years. I guess it's countrywide, it's worldwide, it's happening all over the place. How do we survive when our major clients, being Ministry of Education, they alone are owing us about $300 million. The judiciary is owing us quite a bit. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is not the third on the list, I think. Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Sport are some of the larger ones. Our salaries for the month, Mr. Chairman, is about $35 million. And we struggle to find that money to pay salaries. But I dare say we have paid salaries on time, every time, since I have known myself here. And I've been here for a long time. So we have never not paid salaries. We have paid salaries at all times. So what is our strategy? Our strategy is that the entire organization comes together. Mr. Ferguson on the left of me, Chief Financial, his entire department, Mr. Gosain from marketing, myself, the chairman of the board, Ms. Lazarus, and we all go to the various PSs and ministries, and we use our relationships as much as we can to find those. We even speak to the Ministry of Public Utilities, who have actually gone to the Ministry of Finance and other stakeholders on our behalf, and we have gone directly to the Ministry of Finance. The matter continues to be one that is a major challenge for us. And yes, Mr. Chairman, we are managing the affairs. It's unpredictable, and we are managing the affairs almost on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, yes. I appreciate what you said. But you are a company operating under the Companies Act, correct?
Correct.
And so directors owe their primary duty to the company, not to the government and the government agencies, correct?
Mr. Correct. Yes.
Now, so my concern is, and I could see that your department, your credit operations department is trying its best. You're sending letters, but my concern is, what were to happen if some of these large debts were to become statute barred? Because you have 4 years within which to bring a claim, after which it is not actionable. Do you all get promissory notes or IOUs or admissions of the debt to prevent that from occurring?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we continuously write to our clients. We continuously write to our clients and keep the debts alive. So these debts, in fact, our auditors were asking us to write off some debts, and we kept them on our books for about 15 years because we wanted to keep them. At that point in time, we eventually had to write some off. But we keep the debts alive by writing our clients, meeting with our clients on a regular basis. Notwithstanding that, I understand what you're saying, but our other challenge is, because we are a state agency and 99% of our clients are the state, we cannot sue and we cannot put persons in court because it will be contrary to the state monitoring manual.
I hear you.
We have to use suasion.
But you are in a conundrum, because when you do go into court, you're going to be told your obligation is to the company and to no one else. And if you have a debt that is 15 years old and a debt that has become unenforceable because actions were not taken, I mean, I understand the bind you're in, but you realize that this is an untenable situation for the board. And so I don't know if Ministry of Finance officials want to weigh in on this, but I think this is very unfair to the company. And it is very, very unfair to the board members to be put in this position. Finance?
Thank you, Chairman. While I cannot speak for the individual ministries as a whole, we have been doing the same thing, writing letters to the various ministries and state entities for them to fulfill their obligation to MTS. Sometimes we got MTS report us that it did see increase our collections. However, after a while, it goes back into abeyance. So I think we just have to continue that same drive. But further than that, I really cannot comment further because I really don't know what else we can do at this point in time.
Chairman?
Yes.
Given your concerns, and MTS being a state entity, obviously will fall under the corporation sole. And I think we do have in our audience the Permanent Secretary, Ms. Nicolette Duke of the Ministry of Public Utilities, and also in the context of the chairman of the board of directors of MTS. And I hope that they probably could share some light on what they have been actively doing to liaise with the Ministry of Finance in relation to the minister being, as I said, the Minister of Finance in addressing these releases and so on to the respective state entities, because we have the Ministry of Education, the Judiciary, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Sports Company, the Ministry of Works, the Tobago House of Assembly, the Ministry of Sport and Community Development, the Trinidad and Tobago Housing Development Corporation, the Ministry of National Security, and the TNT Fire Services in the context of the over $636 million owed in receivable.
Yeah. That's right, over $600 million on the road. And the question may arise at some point, can it be said that the directors have failed in the exercise of their fiduciary duties to protect and safeguard and watch the interests of the company? I mean, I am very, very concerned at this large sum and what seems to be a practice that's been going on for some time. Yes?
Yes, Chairman and member, and at the Ministry of Public Utilities, we share your concerns. We have actively been liaising with our counterparts in our sister ministries, writing to them at periodic times, reminding them of their obligations and of the debt owed to the MTS. We have even at times interfaced with the Ministry of Finance to indicate that, releases to certain ministries have not been made for specific periods of time, because what we do, we ask the ministries, could you let us know when last a release was made in order for you to pay, whether it's under janitorial services or security services? And they will indicate such to us and what was the quantum. And then we will liaise with the Ministry of Finance to say, well, we have this amount outstanding from this ministry, and we are kind of lobbying for release for the particular ministry. Of course, the Ministry of Finance looks at its receipts and revenues in order to decide how it would make releases to those ministries. So we have been doing our part. At this point in time, we are just about to send out some reminders again, having the purview of the allocations that have been made to ministries in the recent budget, and to remind them, to lobby them, to please request your releases so that MTS and I dare say other agencies under the ministry can find some relief from the situation that they are in. So we continue to do this on an ongoing basis.
I wonder if we are too polite. If this was a private company, you would have had judgments against you. You'd be paying interest. What is the message? I mean, you have a company that is doing its best. It's a large employer. It's trying to do innovative things. Is it that people feel that because you're a state enterprise, we could just take advantage or not pay you, that the government will bail you out? I mean, I am really, really concerned about this. And I would like to know, what would the position be if the company were to bring legal actions to try and get at least judgments to put on record, on file? Yes? You're on mute.
Sorry, Chair. I was saying perhaps MTS could address that question.
Okay, thanks. MTS?
Well, Mr. Chairman, as I said, MTS cannot take legal action against any of the state enterprises or the ministries. It is not within the convention of these ministries to do that. And maybe I can ask our corporate secretary to elaborate more based on our bylaws.
Well, Chairman, I think that we would be going around in circles here this morning. I think it is the responsibility of the permanent secretary to bring to the attention of the line minister what needs to be done, because to be asking for answers and so on from persons who cannot provide the answers, probably the chairperson of the board might be in a better position to there has to be some kind of combination of what we would call coming together of heads or minds as it relates to the board of directors and the permanent secretary, because the chairman of the board of directors they have a reporting relationship to the line minister, and the permanent secretary too. She has, well, her office, I'm not in any way saying the person, but the office of the permanent secretary has a fundamental responsibility in this scenario also.
Yes, I thank you for that. Well, certainly that's something that we may want to make some recommendations about as a committee. But I think it's good for the public to know some of the constraints that some of our state enterprises face. May I hand over to Member Mark? I know he had some questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would like to join with you in expressing and recording my complete and utter disappointment in the situation facing MTS, where, as you have rightly pointed out, this company is doing its best to keep afloat. They don't depend on the state for one red or black cent. Yet still, Mr. Chairman, you find this company is being squeezed by delinquent ministries who they have provided services to over a period of time. That is unacceptable. It is indefensible. And Mr. Chairman, I think that our committee must consider having a meeting with the Minister of Finance to settle this matter once and for all. I think, as Mr. Indar Singh said, we would be going wrong in circles in this meeting. It is left up to this committee to devise ways and means of addressing this outstanding debt owed to MTS. So that is my first intervention. The second point I'd like to raise, coming from your contribution, Mr. Chairman, has to do with the huge and rising debt portfolio of this company. So while this company is owed over $600 million by several leading state entities, 10 of them we have identified, we have this very said company merely to stay afloat. At one time, Mr. Chairman, you would see in one of their loans amounting to $300 million. This company had to borrow from Republic Bank $300 million in 2018, 2019, merely to meet salaries and to meet NIS payments. So this is a company that is extremely challenged because of the delinquency on the part of a number of state entities. So, Mr. Chairman, when we look at the document that we have before us, we see on page 11 of the thick document where a total of $1.6 billion is owed by a number of banks. And this company has borrowed, I should say, a number of loans. FCB, $400 million. Republic Bank, $300 million. FCB again, 200 million. You have a NCB bond payment of EFCL contractors, $400 million, and a UTC bond of 4.4 million. Now, Mr. Chairman, I would like either the chairman or the CEO or both to indicate to this committee and to the country, one, this 400 million NCB bond, which is a bond, as we are told, designed to refinance a loan of the same value which was taken on behalf of the government to pay contractors that were owed by EFCL. I would like the CEO or the chairman or both to share with this committee, one, the cost of this refinancing of this bond amounting to $400 million and the interest rate that we had to bear. And if we can get from the CEO and or the chairman or both the terms and conditions of this refinancing of this $400 million loan. So we would like to get that, and we would like to know what is the state of play with the loan from FCB, 400 million, Republic Bank, 300 million, and the one from UTC, which is a bond. We understand it's a 20-year bond to deal with building of secondary school. Where are we? Because we are seeing where the bond is supposed to mature in 2022. Are we in a position, Mr. Chairman, to repay this bond that is due in 2022? So can I ask the chairman or the CEO to provide us with some clarification on these matters?
Thank you, Member Mark.
Mr. Chairman, the corporate secretary will elucidate on the matter, and if anything is required again, I will step in after, if that is okay with you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Good morning again, members. Member Mark, I just wanted to clarify that all these loans, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loans, they were all taken on behalf of the government. So MTS is not responsible for the repayment of the loan nor the interest payments. The cost of the loan would be detailed in the table that was supplied in our response at table 35, which includes the principal and the interest. The additional costs, Mr. Ferguson, our CFO, might be better able to respond to. But in terms of the loans taken, the majority of them were taken to finance projects for the government, in particular school construction and school repairs. They were not taken for MTS per se in terms of MTS operations, except for the Republic Bank loan. All the loans, as I said, are being financed by the respective ministries, directly paid to the financial institutions and not through MTS.
Mr. Chairman, may I? When we come to the FCB loan, we were told that that loan was taken out to complete 24 priority schools that were incomplete. However, that is by EFCL. We are seeing in a note here from MTS, the completion of only 13 schools will be funded through this loan. So has this loan been borrowed to complete 24 priority schools? But even though it was designed to do so, only 13 has been completed. And if that is the case, when would the remaining 11 be completed consistent with this loan of $400 million?
Yes, once again, the loan the $400 million loan to commence the completion of the 24 priority schools. This first $400 million is the first phase. So this is phase 1 of the implementation of that program, and 13 schools will be completed under that first phase. We are awaiting the funding from the Ministry of Finance for the remaining schools.
So can you tell this committee how much money has been drawn down from this $400 million for the first phase that would have resulted in these 13 schools being completed, please?
Member Mark, this first $400 million for the first phase, I don't have the figures exactly as to how much was drawn down, but all the projects within the first phase have come in within the budget, and in some cases under the budget that we had. But I could always provide in writing to the committee the remaining part of the loan that is still outstanding to pay contractors. Although it's outstanding to pay contractors, the full $400 million loan is committed. It's committed because the awards have been made for all those contractors and the works are in full effect at this point in time.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, may I just ask another question as I have the floor here? I would like to ask the CEO.
Member Mark, yes. Could we just, Mr. Member Indarsing just had a question, and then we'll come back to you quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Very quickly, based on what Senator Mark has asked, in the context of the total loans and bonds, which is in the vicinity of what, $1.6 billion, if someone within MTS here could advise us this morning, because I heard from the corporate secretary, these loans are really not, quote unquote, on the books of MTS. It is really out of government's policy and I should say cabinet directive. How does the payment and so on occur? Does MTS have any part in the decision-making process, or this comes directly out of the cabinet and the respective ministries?
Yes. So the repayment of the loans is done through the respective ministries. The Ministry of Finance would have written to the respective ministries, Ministry of Public Utilities, Ministry of Education, in terms of making sure that they have the funds available for the repayment of the loans. So the respective ministries pay the loans directly to the financial institutions.
And very quickly, contractors, how the payment is done?
Contractors, for the priority schools and the school repair program, once works are completed and we have the invoices from the contractors, we then send those invoices to the ministry, and once the ministry approves it, they give us the approval for the drawdown of the loan. The banks will not draw down the loan unless we have that approval from the Ministry of Finance.
So the Ministry of Finance?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, can I proceed?
Yes, please. I was just about to call you. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, through you, can you, and I'm going through you to the team of MTS, is it a good practice for a company to be having loans on their books? Well, loans that we are seeing are probably supposed to be on their books, but the loans are really being taken out by other entities, and the Ministry of Finance is underwriting these loans by guaranteeing them. I am just wondering, from a good corporate governance perspective, is that something that is a good practice, or is that in violation of good corporate financial practices? I'm just concerned about that, Mr. Chairman, and I thought I should raise it through you to see if I'm on the right track.
Member Mark, You took the words out of my mouth, and you've put it even better than I could have put it. Also from an accounting practice. And isn't that the same recipe that got sports company in trouble? Perhaps the board and the ministry can help explain Member Mark's questions. Thanks. Ministry of Finance.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Those loans are, as MTS said, were taken out on behalf of court, but it is residing on MTS books. Those loans are serviced, guaranteed and serviced by the Ministry of Finance to the various ministries. Whether it is good practice or not, well, that is another issue, and that part I will prefer put that in writing, if that is not a problem with the committee.
Thank you. I just want to be clear. So you said that you would provide us with answers in writing on this aspect. Is that it?
The aspect where it is good practice that those loans should reside on the balance sheet of MTS. So yes. I cannot give an off-the-cuff answer to that. So if it's not a problem with the committee, I'm willing to put it in writing.
Yes, I appreciate it, because I think this may also have application to other state enterprises if this is a practice that obtains. So we would be glad for your considered report in writing. Someone?
Mr. Chairman, can I go?
Member Mark?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I know that my 10 minutes is coming to an end. So let me just ask quickly another question to MTS. I have a few more, but that will come in round two. On page 32 of your submission, that is MTS, there is this very, I would say, innovative and unique approach that has been taken by MTS. And it talks about an energy audit at its head office in order to realize savings in electricity consumption through implementation of the recommendation from the audit. First of all, I would like someone to indicate us what has been the concrete results in dollars and cents, in value terms of this energy audit. And can this committee be provided a copy of this energy audit? The second thing quickly, and again, is a very innovative approach by MTS in trying to manage their difficult financial situation, where they have in fact indicated on that very said page, Mr. Chairman, that through prudence in managing and reducing over time, they have been able to really do something very important. They have been able to decrease their manpower deficit by increasing recruitment and therefore expanding employment. Again, maybe someone from MTS can share with this committee how they have been able to do these things in a very innovative manner. So those are the two areas, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to deal with as I close my round one and allow others to come in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Member Mark, for that question. Given our challenges, and when things are tough, you have to find ways and means to get things done. So we decided to go on a cost-cutting exercise, and one of it is how best we can reduce utilities, etc. So we conducted an energy audit at our head office, and I will provide all of that for you, Member Mark, and the committee. I don't have the details as exactly the reduction, but we have been enjoying increased reductions by doing some simple green innovative things that were recommended to us. And in doing that, we are saving monies in terms of TNTech. I know that is not good news for TNTech, but it is great news for us. We have been saving monies with respect to our TNTech bills and a number of other things. Simple things of switching off lights and understanding the capacity for air conditioning and et cetera, et cetera. We took all those things into consideration, and we have been able to reduce a significant amount of our public utilities bill. With respect to, and we can provide the information, Member Mark, on the actual amounts. I don't have it in front of me at this point. With respect to overtime have been a bugbear in MTS for some years now. And it had to do with our deficit in security numbers. We have a staff about 2,800, 2,900 security officers out of the 6,600. And at any point in time, there were clients, example, the judiciary, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Finance, who required, we would have won tenders and they required our service and we could not provide because of recruitment, because of limited personnel. As a result, you would find that if an officer gets sick or somebody stays home, because we are one of the few people that are following the minimum wages bill to the T, and you have to pay overtime after the first 12 hours and after the first second day and 24 hours, etc. And I want to just take a point and say, I want to take the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to say that the playing field is not level with the rest of security firms in Trinidad and Tobago. Our recruitment process is second to none. And therefore, we take a longer time to provide an officer well-trained, well-oiled, well-uniformed, and understanding certain customer relation things to be out on a site. There are other persons and other organizations. In the morning, you pitch marbles, and in the evening, you're in a security location. We frowned on that, and we intend to give good value for money with respect to that. So that's why we had a deficit. We have decided to open up our recruitment even a little more. Our stringency, we didn't relax it too much, but we have decided to open it up to more females. We have been caravanning throughout the country, and we have been able to employ quite a number of persons. As a result of the employment, we have reduced overtime. We have also set up an overtime committee with the audit committee of the board, and that committee is monitoring the overtime. We have been meeting on a weekly and fortnightly basis with our sergeants and our regional supervisors and our security team. And we have been able to cut I think, I will have to provide the exact figure, but I think the figure we have been able to reduce overtime by $49 million. And to us, that was a significant feat for MTS. We continue to want to reduce it. Of course, the pandemic has seen a little increase here and there because you have quarantine leave, you have a number of persons out there, and at any point in time, there are about 500-600 members of our staff that might be on quarantine, given the state of affairs in Trinidad at this point. Thank you.
Before Member Mark comes in, I see Member Leons has his hand up. Member Leons.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And through you, CEO, I heard you speak about the playing field not being leveled, and I saw that in your report on page 22. You spoke specifically about the private security bill. Could you expand on that a bit, please?
Thank you very much, Member. With respect to the private security bill, I'll ask the Corporate Secretary to say something on that after I'm finished with the leveling playing field. The playing field is not level for many reasons. As I said, we follow the law of the land to the T. So number one, as a security firm, we do not hire non-nationals. Other security firms do. Number two, we follow the Minimum Wages Act and we pay overtime as prescribed by the Act. Other security firms don't. Number three, we tender on the market with competitive bidding. And I dare say our security rates cannot be higher than what the market can bear. And therefore, the best form of efficiency with respect to our rates is based on the normal laws of capitalism, demand and supply. And based on our market rates, our rates are reasonably priced at about $32 an hour for unarmed security and about $40 for armed security. But when we tender those rates, there are persons in the industry who are not following the prescribed rules and regulations and laws of Trinidad and Tobago, and they may be tendering way lower than us. And the time have come where tender evaluations for security cannot be based on price alone. It must also be based on national security. It must also be based on following the rules and laws of Trinidad and Tobago. It must also be based on training and simple things of background checks. All our employees, background checks, and we ensure that they comply with a good character certificate, a certificate of good character, etc., etc. So, remember, from that regard, I think the industry, basically tendering is a price-sensitive issue as opposed to the whole package in looking at a security firm and how they tender. With respect to the private security bill, we have made some contributions to that, and we can submit our contributions on that to the committee in writing as to what our thoughts are with the private security bill.
Thank you. I know Member Inder Singh is going to have a question, and then he's going to have his round right after. But what I'm hearing you saying is that MTS is concerned about establishing and maintaining standards in the security sector. Is that it?
That's right.
Thank you. And I believe the corporate secretary had something, and then Member Inder Singh has some questions.
Well, with regard to the private security bill, it really goes towards what we feel is leveling the playing field, because it will introduce into the private security industry standards that we have been adhering to since our inception, but that our competitors do not. And we compete with these competitors who are not complying with the statutory regulations and all of the requirements that we are. And they compete with us in an open playing field, but it's not level. And that is why we encourage the legislation. We also have some concerns with it as well, which we will send to the committee in writing.
Member Leons, you have your hand up?
No, I just wanted to also join with you, Chairman, in identifying that the MTS has been performing as, I would dare say, a model state agency, being self-sufficient, having all your audited accounts on time, up to date, and I heard the CEOs speak about the growth almost 10 times based on revenue earnings and also employment, which, I mean, those are the types of milestones you want all our agencies to really have. Very concerned in terms of the debt and I was happy to hear the discussion in terms of debt collection. So I really would like some strong recommendations in terms of how we can mitigate against this large debt growing, because if the MTS could within that period grow 10 times, what would have happened if their revenue earnings were significantly more? So that's my contribution for now.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience, Member Inder Singh. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And I too, because in this country we have had a history and glaring examples of state entities not being able to be up to speed with audited financial statements and so on. And I'm heartened to know for a fact that MTS has had audited financial statements up to 2020, and they have begun to focus on finishing or completing 2021. And this morning, as I have listened intensely, I again will plead with the permanent secretary in terms of her reporting responsibility to her line minister and also to the chairperson of the board of directors of MTS, because it is very clear that MTS is one of the largest employers in the country. And based on the struggles we are hearing from a financial point of view, and the very fact that the CEO lamented that he has been struggling to meet that $35 million wage bill, I do not want to hear one morning that MTS cannot pay the salaries, and then they will begin a process of sending people home. And in the context of their obligations to national insurance and PUIE and so on, which is up to scratch, again, commendations, because we have heard horror stories in this country where employees' deductions for NIS and PAYE and so on have been made, but have not been remitted to the National Insurance Board and so on. So from that angle, I will commend them for what they are doing. I want to immediately go to the issue of one of their major challenges being the outstanding negotiations for the respective bargaining agencies and so on. And in his budget presentation for fiscal 2022, the Minister of Finance had indicated that there will be a go-ahead, or the green light will be given for the for negotiations to commence with state entities and even the public service. Could I ask of MTS if they have realized any green light to begin negotiations or to commence the salary negotiations? Because when I look at the document, I think that salary negotiations are up in the air from as far as 2014 until 2021 and beyond. Could we get to the period of collective bargaining that is to be finalized or to be negotiated?
Thank you. Page 21. Yeah. Thank you very much, member, through the chairman. With respect to the security personnel under the Estate Police Association, our last wage period settled is 2010 to 2013. We would have a proposal sent to the Ministry of Public Utilities that I believe would have gone to the CPO. With respect to the maintenance workers, janitorial maintenance, under the Transport Industrial Workers Union, our last wage period settled is 2011-2014. The rest is outstanding, and that would have been sent to the Ministry of Public Utilities, the new negotiations, and would have been sent off to the CPO. With respect to the administrative, technical, and managerial staff, which is non-unionized, our last wage increase was 2007 to 2010, and that has been also sent to the Ministry of Public Utilities and off to the CPO. We are awaiting guidance on how to proceed.
And thank you very much. CEO, could I ask the Permanent Secretary, through you, Chairman, if any green light or any discussions have been taking place between the Ministry of Public Utilities vis-a-vis the CPO and the Ministry of Finance as it relates to when negotiations may commence? Because I say this in the context of the when I have done my sense of analysis from where I sit being the opposition spokesperson for labor matters and so on, the earning capacity of MTS workers in terms of their wage structure, they are not at the highest end in the country. And within recent times, there have been tremendous increases in the price of bread and chicken and fish and butter and cheese and milk, and I could go on and on. When these negotiations may commence, Madam Permanent Secretary?
And at this time, we do not have a specific date, but we may appear before the HREC to be given instructions.
Thank you very much. Probably we will have to continue to ask the Minister of Finance in another place. But could I also focus on the issue of the COVID-19 pandemic? On page 22 of your submission, Chair of the Board and, of course, CEO, you have indicated that MTS to date has lost 25 employees to the virus. Could you advise us whether, and hundreds of employees, either they have been either quarantined or hospitalized. Could you indicate to us whether any of these, this figure of 25 employees would have died as a result of being on the job or contracting? I know you may not being medical experts here this morning, but did they contract this in the actual work environment? And how many of your employees currently quarantined or hospitalized as it relates to the COVID-19 virus and how it has impacted upon your operation?
Thank you, Member. Through the chair again. I would ask Ms. Hussain to come in a little bit, but what I would want to say at the introductory state of this answer is simply the 25 persons, based on the information that I have, the 25 persons, they would have contracted COVID from community spread. I am not aware that any of those persons contracted it within the locations that we are presently serving. Nonetheless, our condolences go out to them, and we thank them for their service, and we thank their families for their service over the period of time. Most of these employees, given that MTS is 42 years old, have become family to MTS and family to our clients. And it's really a sad state of affairs. We have nearly 500 persons on quarantine. And at this stage, I would ask Ms. Hussain to contribute as to how the company is treating with this.
So, good day to everyone. Members, what we do is we actively track all of our employees who have contracted COVID-19. Of course, keep a record of all the employees who would have passed on sadly from the effects of COVID-19. And we keep a track of all the employees who are on quarantine leave. So yes, we did lose 25 employees. We have records of 111 persons who would have tested positive. However, we have quite a bit of employees who would have gone on quarantine leave, possibly for primary or secondary contact, COVID-19 household quarantine. And that has amounted to 1,967 persons who would have been off on some sort of quarantine leave period. The way that we have approached it is through vaccine advocacy. We have always said that MTS is pro-vaccination, and we utilize our social media channels to ensure that all our employees are up to date with COVID-19 information, what Ministry of Health protocols are, as well as through one-on-one sessions held by our corporate communications and HR department, where we would ensure that employees have that up-to-date information and answer any questions or concerns that we have. We also participate in all known vaccine efforts through the government and through our Ministry of Public Utilities. So we support it and encourage our members to go and get vaccinated, our employees to go and get vaccinated.
If I could follow up, given I use the term guardedly, the struggle as it relates to the finances of MTS and so on, has it in any way impacted upon MTS' ability to provide, let us say, personal protective equipment to its employees, the establishment of sanitization workstations and so on, as it relates to the observance of the COVID-19 protocols?
Remember, the answer is yes. It has impacted on us tremendously, but we have found ways and means of rationing what we have and working with what we have, reallocating resources from one location to another, depending on which location was shut down for the period. And we ensure that wherever we were, that our employees were protected with the relevant PPEs and the relevant chemicals that were required to do the sanitizing were present. At no point in time have we ever sacrificed the safety of our employees and our clients. And I must add also, during this period, my management and the board, led by our chairman, have not been sleeping at all. We have been providing human service in terms of meeting with all our stakeholders, our clients, and we have been meeting with the unions in particular, indicating to the unions, because they're on the ground getting real-time information, and we have been meeting with our unions to find out wherever these issues may have arisen. Wherever they are, we sort it out, and of course, we can always do it more, but we are working on what we have. And we probably will talk a little more about some innovative things that we are doing when we come to the opening of school in a bit. Thank you, Member.
Thank you very much. And one final question in this round. Chairman, I do not know, because we would have heard from the government that a mandatory vaccination correspondence was sent out through the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Public Administration to all ministries and state enterprises and statutory authorities as it relates to the establishment of a quasi-safe zone across the board, and as I said, in relation to government, ministries and state enterprises and statutory authorities and so on. That has been placed on hold, apparently by the government, and more so through the Prime Minister and the Ministry of the Attorney General, or the Office of the Attorney General. Could I ask MTS if in recent times, if they have had any sort of interaction from the Ministry of Public Administration or the Office of the Attorney General as it relates to this issue of mandatory vaccination, or should I say the establishment of a quasi-safe zone within the operations of MTS?
Member, the answer is no. We have had no interaction from the Attorney General or Public Administration with respect to this. Notwithstanding that, our position, as was said by Ms. Hussain, is that we are a company that is pro-vax, and we have been having an encouragement campaign with our employees to get all of them vaccinated. In fact, we utilize every single available public space that was vaccination points, the Racket Center, SAPA, NAPA, UTT, through the Supermarkets Association, through the Securities Association, through the Contractors Association, through the cooperation and Sawa Regional Corporation downstairs at MTS's Plaza. And we are continuing to encourage all our members to become pro-vax. And that is our position on this matter.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I will pass on to other members at this point in time.
Thank you, Member endorsing. I have some questions. So I'm going to take my cue from when you said that your rate for armed security is $40. All right. So may I take it as a given that MTS is concerned about the upsurge in crime?
Well, Member, sorry, did I answer this, Member?
Yes, because I prefer to have a dialogue. So you are concerned about the upsurge in crime?
Of course, we are concerned about crime in general. And okay. MTS provides the security service to all our clients. But we also say to our clients that security is just not manpower. It also is a number of things: lighting, fencing, the community in which we live in, and of course, communication, so that we can understand what is happening. Our rates are not determined by the level of crime, but our rates are determined by the wages, training, uniform, and statutory obligations that we have put onto the rate package. And our rate of $40 is probably at the lower end for armed security officers. These rates go up to $50 in some cases in the market. So we are in the process right now of generating new rates. We have a situation where most of our clients have been paying the preferred rate. There are some clients that are not yet paying preferred rates. Those clients, we will soon have some hard conversations with them, and whether we carry them along is going to be a different issue.
Right, but the point I wanted to get is this, that your security personnel are in the front line. You're protecting schools, the judiciary, government campus, financial towers, even the Prime Minister's residence, correct?
Correct. Those are some of our major clients.
And so now I'm focusing now on the armed guards in a situation where yesterday the Minister of National Security confirmed, he expressed concerns about the heavy influx of illegal firearms. So we have an upsurge in crime. We have a heavy influx of illegal firearms. But my understanding is that there's an ongoing investigation within the police service regarding firearm users' licenses and the granting of applications for firearms by the Commissioner of Police. My understanding is that in the course of this investigation, firearms books have been suspended from variations, and that they're doing some forensic audits onto the firearms that were issued. They're doing some double checking. But without his firearms book, a guard can't carry his security firearm. Is that a correct understanding?
Yes, correct understanding, Chairman, but this matter never affected MTS. MTS's FUL and FUECs have never been revoked. We continue to carry our FUECs and our FUL, and we continue to be legal with what we do with respect to our weapons.
But do you have any new applications for firearms in at the moment? Is this impacting you at all, this forensic audit?
No, it's not impacting us at this point in time. What we have, it may impact a little bit with respect to the precepts. We have been applying for some precepts. That there's a delay there now. Nothing to worry about at this point in time. We have enough armed officers on board.
Okay, so what would you say as some of the challenges or issues facing the security sector today?
So I think, Mr. Chairman, I think in the age of technology, we have been encouraging our clients to a large extent that we need to partner with technology, electronic security, and a number of other things to complement real-time information and real monitoring of what is happening and responses to what is happening. In the school system, for example, we are in about 450 schools throughout the country, 78 secondary schools, and the rest will be primary schools. The manpower allocated in those schools are based on surveys done between MTS and the Ministry of Education. But the challenges there is that our officers obviously are unarmed. And you're unarmed, you're in the night, there might be fences that are not up, there may be lighting that is poor. These schools are built on 5 acres of land, so it allows perpetrators to enter any angle. When you have 2 security officers alone housing in a school, electronic security is required in our school system, and I think rapid response is required in the school system.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other comments on the challenges or issues facing the security sector and recommendations? Because I know Member Mark wanted to come back with another question. So just before. No? Okay, Member Mark.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would be brief. I just want to follow up on the COVID-19 emergency response plan. And if Mrs. Hossain, the HR officer, can just clarify quickly the following for us. 1, have the company considered any incentives to encourage vaccination as 1? 2, have any restrictions been placed on unvaccinated staff? And the last one, before I turn on to my other colleagues who have not spoken as yet, what percentage of MTS staff is currently vaccinated? Those are 3 quick questions so that I don't want to come back.
Hussain, you can answer those.
Thank you. Remember, what we have done in terms of incentives is that we give time off, full pay for employees to get vaccinated. We also would give time off with pay to employees who may feel side effects the day after. So those are some of the incentives that we encourage employees that they will not lose earnings to go and get vaccinated. We also, in some instances, would provide transport, and we would provide, of course, encouragement and support to any employee who goes to be vaccinated. Your second question.
Have any restrictions been placed on unvaccinated staff at MTS?
No, we have no restrictions at this time for unvaccinated staff. We do have approximately we have four contracts that require vaccinated staff, and we have been able to provide it, but we do not have any restrictions. The employees who were not vaccinated and may have been assigned to that contract have just been reassigned to another contract.
And finally, what percentage of your staff is currently vaccinated?
So I would talk about known vaccination, and known being persons who would have provided us with information, provided us with copies of their immunization records, and it stands at about 25%. However, we've had some challenges in persons providing the information to us. There's been a bit of a pushback from our union, our majority recognized union, and the State Police Association. I think that is public in terms of data protection, etc., some of the concerns that they have expressed publicly. So yes, we are at about 25% that are known vaccinated, but we feel at MTS that it's more in line with what is the national average, which is possibly about 45%.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll pause at this time to allow my two other colleagues who are yet to speak, both Senator Lizama as well as the Honorable Cummings, and then I will come back. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Mark. And also, I believe Member Indar Singh had some questions on school repairs, but let me first invite Member Cummings and Member Lizana Leasing to see if they have any questions.
Chairman,
Yes,
members, good morning again. Thank you very much for this opportunity to join in this discussion. Permit me, please, to first of all congratulate the chairman and board of directors of the MTS, as well as the CEO and all of the staff at the MTS for the excellent work that they have been doing over the past 6 years, and by extension since its existence, but particularly over the past 6 years. It was a pleasure to receive this document, this very large and comprehensive document, which brought with it up-to-date reports, up-to-date statistics, and it was quite refreshing to receive that from a state entity. So please permit me to congratulate you for your work and for your reporting. I just have a few basic questions, please. My first thing is I wanted to ask about some capital projects, the status reports on your capital projects, which is response to question 36. If you go to the back, the last page of that document, it just says that a number of items are due for delivery to different schools for the Ministry of Education or different entities. And the deliveries are estimated to commence in February of 2022, which February is tomorrow. And we know that many schools will be reopening for standard fives and for the wider school population in secondary schools as of next week, which is from February 7th. So I just wanted to know if all of these deliveries, which are estimated to commence in February 2022, if they're on track, which is the supply and installation of furniture and ancillary items for the priority schools. So I wanted a status update on that, first of all, please.
Thank you very much, Member. I may ask the construction manager to come in a bit. But with respect to the priority schools, most of those schools will not be utilized from the 7th of February. Those schools may commence at a later date, but we have finished most of the works on those schools that we would have handed over. The FF&E is still being procured, and that is a matter that will be dealt with in a few months from now, weeks from now, actually. With respect to the primary schools and other secondary schools, all the emergency works given to us by the Ministry of Education, we have commenced as many that were given to us, and this week we'll get many more to commence, because that is how the nature of emergencies operate. Principals will start going into the schools and recognizing that the sewer system is not working, etc., etc. The can-do crew continues to rise to the occasion, and we do perform. I want to say the DNA of MTS with respect to the schools is interesting. We were set up 42 years to deal with this. We know the culture. We know the relationships in these schools. We have developed them over years. So what we do, we interact with the principals of the schools, and we ensure that even if a school is not completed 100%, we will work with his time, and we'll try to finish the areas that is required for the opening of school. So I want to assure that we will have all the schools reopened again and on time.
Chairman, you wanted to ask something? I see you leaned forward to your microphone. Sorry.
No, I didn't want to interrupt you. I was just going to ask them about the FIDIC contracts and how it works in practice. But please continue, member.
Thanks, Chairman. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. CEO. And I'm happy that you talked about the culture of MTS, because I want to move now into your strategic plan. I saw that your strategic plan for 2016 to 2021 has come to an end, and you've put forward your strategic plan for 2022 to 2026. And I wanted specifically to zone in on lesson 5 on page 18 of your strategic plan, which speaks to your research and development capacity. I saw you put that, I suppose you put it as one of the weaknesses coming out of your experience 2016 to 2021. And I want to know, and I suspect that you have used this opportunity of COVID on the new realities to pivot accordingly and to make your company, I guess, more effective and more resilient and able to deal with it. So can you please tell me a little bit about your intentions for your research and development capacity, please, through the strategic plan 2022-2026?
Thank you again, member. So we would have completed our last strategic plan almost in completion stages. We accomplished quite a lot, but then we were confronted with COVID, and we learned quite a lot of lessons during this period. And one of our lessons, given even our receivables, one of our lessons is that we have to do business a little different, and we may have to find clients that are not government clients. So we have decided to do some institutional strengthening, increase our research capacity, and target particular clients and do the research on those clients as to the nature of janitorial maintenance and security that is required. And that research will then inform a set of SOPs, and understanding will develop the format for entering into those markets. So we are looking presently at our product life cycle of all of the products and services that we are offering. On some cases, we're already on the mature stage, and we are trying to re-inject on those product life cycles new businesses. For example, in security, we want to start offering elite security to the private sector. We want to start offering events security. We want to start doing nursing home janitorial maintenance in the private sector. So there are a number of things. We want to do a lot more event management with respect to agribusiness. We want to utilize the private sector a little more. In other words, what we are trying to do is we use research and development to determine along the line of the products that we offer, the core business that we do, what else can we do, and which other markets we can tap into. So we will stay ahead of the game. And while we are bidding in the government sector, we intend to bid in the private sector and other areas. So that is the thinking behind research and development.
Thank you very much. I find that very, very exciting. And I look forward to seeing what comes out of this and to see how MTS goes forward. Is there anything else out of the strategic plan out of 2022, the new strategic plan, 2022-2026, that you think we need to talk about? Because we have the national population listening, and I think it's important for them to hear how MTS has pivoted and will be moving forward.
So thank you again, member. The strategic plan 2022-2026, we are not trying to achieve 10 things. We have 3 main objectives. The first objective is to maintain the trust and the quality that we have. We have brand equity, we have customer loyalty, and we have trust with our clients and the general public. So we intend to build, we intend to maintain that trust and quality. So we, under that heading, we are going to engage in a lot more cash management structure and system. Then we are going to also establish a lot of quality controls, a lot of SOPs to maintain and upgrade our quality standards to our clients. And the third aspect under that first objective is that we are going to see how far we can go with mission critical buildings. What mission critical buildings are those key clients that have a high security risk that we prefer to have a state agency handle those buildings. The second objective is that we want to build on our strengths. And there are two things there. The first is to create new products and services. And we spoke about some of them just a while ago. And the second thing is to increase our project management portfolio. That was part of the last strategic plan. And as you can see, coming out of the last strategic plan, we have increased our project management portfolio by 1,000%. We have new clients, the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service. We continue to have the Ministry of Education and all their services. We have the Ministry of Communication and the THA as some existing clients, but with additional support coming from projects. We intend to go after a lot more ministries and a lot more things, even in the private sector, with respect to project management. To that end, we are building our capacity even further with respect to that. And the third aspect of the strategic plan would be institutional strengthening. And under that aspect, what we are going to do, we are going to roll out our succession plan. We are going to continue to build the capacity in terms of research and development. And we are going to continue our training. One of the exciting things that happened with the last plan is that we got approval, we applied and got approval for the National Training Agency. So we can now, we are officialized in terms of certifying and training security officers in the private sector and then put them back out on the market. So we are that incubator for training. That's our revenue generating area. It's innovative and we have been approved by the NTA. The last part of that institutional strengthening is really the chairman is of the belief, strongly so, and that is the way to go. For us to increase profitability, and MTS is a profitable organization. We have been making profitable positions over the last few years. In fact, we moved from a negative retained earnings of to $100 and something million to now positive retained earnings of $62 million. So we are on the making profits, but we want to continue increasing our efficiencies and our effectiveness. And in doing that, the digitalization process, which is something that we want to engage in, being a large company with about 7 locations and 7 regional offices and 900 locations and then 90 clients, you can see the question of payroll and having 6,600 employees, how that becomes a problem. So the digitalization process that we are engaging in has commenced, and we will bring that to the front. That is going to bring some efficiencies to MTS. That's going to take us to another level. So while we have challenges of all the things that we have spoken about, we are trying to find the light at the end of the tunnel, and we are trying to remain innovative. We'll say much more, remember, about that. I mean, it's on the document, so I'm encouraging persons here to read our strategic plan and the lessons learned. The lessons learned from a state agency during the last strategic plan is worthy of reading. Thank you very much, member.
Thank you so very much, Mr. CEO. The strategic plan was in fact excellent, and I want to compliment you for that. And perhaps it would do well for many other agencies and organizations to take a look at it as well. My final question, Chairman, really is just your answer to question number 52, which is what is being done to ensure that MTS contributes towards the achievement and goals and objectives of the national environmental policy. Can I ask you to expand on that, please? Because I see you spoke about a lot of these things, but these things are actually in place already. Can you confirm for me that these things or most of these things are actually in practice already? Thank you.
Member, can I point to Ms. Hussain to address that matter?
Thank you.
Yes, most of these things are already in place in terms of, and it would have started out of our strategic plan where there was an emphasis on looking at the environment, looking at how we could contribute through our agribusiness services and through our facilities management services towards the policy, the environmental policy. What we found in just preparing this document and looking again at the policy just to refresh some of the items that are listed there is a whole host of corporate governance responsibilities that are associated with the environmental policy, which we are pleased to say that we are following and that we have implemented. In terms of our environmental services, we spoke about the energy audit, which we'll be providing more information to you on. And out of that, we will let you see some of the cost savings, etc. And we have a whole launch of our agribusiness services, well, a relaunch of our agribusiness services to include that kind of green space initiative. So the answer to your question in short is yes, we are implementing, and we have implemented a lot of the initiatives.
Thank you. Thank you very kindly. Chairman, this ends my first round of questioning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Lizama Leasing. Now I have members Cummings, Endorsing, and Leonce all lined up to do questions. I just have one quick question, and then I'm going to ask Member Cummings to ask his questions. You mentioned that in larger contracts, FIDIC conditions of contracts are used. I just wanted to know how you find that working out for your operations in construction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask Corporate Secretary to respond.
Chair, well, with regard to the FIDIC contracts, as I said, we use them in the larger contracts. For the most part, we haven't had any issues that has been adverse to the operation of the project. And for the most part, they've been moving smoothly, and we've been able to rely on FIDIC to be able to enforce certain aspects with the contractors. So far, I would say it has been working well.
Do you use the dispute arbitration boards, the DABs, in the course of your constructions?
Only once we've used it.
And did you find it beneficial?
It was. Well, for us, it was, yes.
Thank you. So the FIDIC form of contract, is it something that you would recommend to other players in the construction sector?
Yes, definitely. Sometimes for us, we have not found that the white book, which is the one for consultants, we have not found that to be in the best interest of our projects to move forward with, but we have used the red book and the yellow book for all our other projects.
Thank you. Member Cummings.
Thank you, Chairman, and members of the team from MTS and from the Ministry of Finance. Chairman, I would just like to make a few comments. I do not have any question at this point in time because my colleagues would have traversed the areas that I would have liked to ask some questions on, and I got the information I required. I want to, at this time, of course, point out certain issues that I think stand out in relation to this company as we traverse and we interrogate many state companies throughout the state sector. These are some of the concerns that we usually have, but I see that on this occasion, this state company stands out in a particular way. And it is noteworthy that this company receives no subventions from the government. I think that for a company this size that has been doing the kind of work that they're doing in terms of security at schools, in terms of maintenance at schools and other public buildings, in terms of project management services, and operating without any subvention from the government as a state company, I think that is something that we need to take note of and applaud MTS in that regard. Additionally, I see that MTS has its audited financial statements up to 2020 completed and that 2021 has begun. And I want to, of course, publicly commend the Board of Management and the management of MTS for having your statutory compliance up to date. Mr. Chairman, MTS, of course, is one of the largest employers in the state sector. And I, again, wish to commend them for the work that they have been doing. There is one other matter I wish to, the CEO mentioned earlier. There's one matter. CEO or chairman, I see that your receivables are in excess of 600 million. That, of course, is certainly a bit of concern. Could you share, apart from what you have said in your report to the committee, what would constitute some of the actions you're taking to bring that figure down?
Member Cummings, you were not here, I think, but we did traverse that in some detail, that area.
Okay. Okay. My apologies, Chairman. You know, I had to run off to another meeting early on, so I think that may have happened when I was out for my short stint at the other meeting I had to go to. But generally, Chairman, I want to say that MTS stands out as one of the, let me put it properly, better operating state companies. And that red flag there was the only thing that I thought needed to be looked at, because it has the potential of course, interfering with the operations. And I hope that I will get the, of course, from the minutes I will get the response to that. Other than that, I want to encourage the point made by the CEO earlier on in response to Member Lizama and the strategic plan to expand the project management portfolio. I think it is the right direction to go in. And of course, we look forward to hearing better things from you in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Cummings. Member Inder Singh.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And just to very quickly, a couple issues. And we continue to commend MTS and their employees for being in the front line, even when the majority of workers and so on were home. MTS, while not being medical workers, they were on the front line in the battle against COVID-19 and so on. And we must ensure that we look after our employees and so on when they go beyond the call of duty. As CEO or the chairman of the board, your MTS pension plan fund, is it fully funded? Are there any outstanding liabilities and so on?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, member. The pension fund is fully funded. There are no liabilities. We are up to mark with whatever we have to do with the pension plan. And be rest assured, the pension plan is managed by Republic Bank and RBC, by RBC. So we have audited statements coming from the auditors of the pension plan, and as far as I'm aware, all is well.
Thank you very much for giving me that sense of assurance, Mr. CEO, and I hope that you and your board will do everything within your power to ensure that no one interferes with the funds out there. With respect to the repairs, improvements, or construction start for completed projects as it relates to the years from 2019 to 2022, the schools which have been identified are secondary and primary and so on. Can you inform us how these schools are selected?
Thank you, member. That's a very important and interesting question. The schools are not selected by MTS, and neither are they selected, as far as my information is, by the Ministry of Education at head office. The school principals, my understanding, would determine the problems in their various schools, send it through the school supervisor. The school supervisor will then send it to the engineering division of the Ministry of Education, and they will determine what is emergency and not, and that is then sent to MTS for scoping. We will then meet with the principals and we will do a scope of works for the particular project in the school, and on completion of that scoping, we would send it back to the Ministry of Education for approval. Only on approval from the Ministry of Education, then in writing to MTS, we commence the works for those schools.
Thank you very much. And one final question, Chairman. I make this in the context, a plea here, being the Member of Parliament for Couva South, because in the schools targeted for repairs and improvements in 2022, the Couva West Secondary School is part of the listing. And that school has been a trouble issue for me and a cause of concern given the impact of the pandemic, given the break in whatever has occurred at that particular school, and in the interest of the children, in the interest of the parents and so on. I would really plead upon MTS to keep a close eye on the repairs that is being done at that particular school to ensure that it's fully functional and in terms of the infrastructure and so on, there is no breakdown that will further impact upon the flow of education for the children.
Thank you, Member. Is there a response to that comment, that last observation?
Well, Mr. Chairman, all I can assure the member is that we treat all schools equally. And we will do our best, as long as it's on the list, to ensure that all the work that is required be done on time, on a timely fashion and within budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Leons.
Thank you very much, Chair. To MTS, through you, Chair. Most of what I was going to ask, you started to speak about it when talking about your strategic plans. On your second plan, you spoke about increasing in your project management services. You have a very good track record in terms of your delivery. And I was wondering, you know how Trinidadians are. When you're doing good, you get more, and you get more, and you get more. And it seems that seems to be what is going on with you. How is that affecting you in terms of your human resource and also in terms of your recurrent expenditure based on your challenges with finances?
Thank you again, member. A very interesting question. So the project management department, we were lagging behind with respect to work prior to 2018. After 2018, the division would have picked up. So most of the persons in that division, we would have deployed them into other departments through the facilities maintenance division. We have now brought everyone back onto the division, and we have a team of about 22 or 23 persons in that division that would be executing the jobs. We have several engineers on board. We are presently trying to build our capacity, and we are out trying to recruit some more engineers and project assistants for the work in that division. With respect to profitability of the division, that division was running at a loss prior to 2018. Because our projects are in the vicinity where it is now, the division is self-sufficient, and we charge our project management fees in the range of between 5 to 7%. By and large, 5% is our project fees, and we receive the fees on the invoicing, on the payments from our clients to us. And the division has now become profitable, and the division is set to grow further with respect to the capacity building and utilizing of project management skills.
So you're very comfortable where you are right now in terms of the load that you currently carry.
Yes, member. What we do, apart from using in-house resources only, we also utilize consultants, and the supervision is also done by some of our consultants. So we have an in-house staff, we have some consultants, and we try to utilize that dual arrangement. So it reduces our cost for ongoing staff, and it actually provides better supervision from the consultant that we can hold them accountable for. We also provide value for money with respect to all our jobs. As far as we can, the larger projects, QSs to ensure that value for money. You would have heard recently at the opening of the Malabar School that the Honorable Prime Minister was very pleased that we came in below budget for that school. We also came in below budget for several of those priority schools that we did in the past. And this is based on prudent management and strict project management ideology that we have at MTS.
Thanks a lot, CEO. And again, keep the MTS flag flying high and represent for the other state agencies.
Thank you, Member.
Thank you, Member. I know Member Mark and Member Lizama Lee Singh will have two more sets of questions, but I just wanted to ask a couple of things. One is on your national environmental policy, you talked about the use of environmentally friendly chemicals where possible. If you could elaborate on that. And then you also spoke about the phased conversion of company vehicles to CNG. And again, if you could elaborate on that, for example, the size of the fleet and that conversion process, where are you at? So please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With respect to green chemicals and environmentally friendly chemicals, we do not utilize any chemicals at the company that is not approved by Kariri. So we ensure that there's a proper MDS sheet that goes along with the chemicals, and we utilize the knowledge of that sheet to train our employees as to the use of those chemicals. We prefer to use suppliers that are green and are friendly to the environment. Certainly, if you're a supplier that is green and friendly to the environment, you have a friend in MTS and the chemicals. Yes. With respect to the fleet, we have not been so successful, Mr. Chairman. We are presently working on having that matter resolved. Because of our fleet, we found it, while we want to go in that direction, we found it very difficult, given the limited number of CNG stations in the country, to be dealing with Cedrus and Barakpo and Toku and all these remote areas that we provide security in all these schools. So for us, I think it's an idea, and we want to move in that direction, obviously, but we have not been that successful. And I think we will try again to talk to the principals in that area.
And my final question is sort of like tagged on to this strat plan. Now, you talked about you're looking to get more non-government clients. You're looking to provide elite security to the private sector, and you're utilizing research and development to expand your operations, to create new products, new services. You're doing very well. You're a profitable organization. And so the question that occurs to me is, what's the rationale for keeping MTS as a state enterprise? In your discussions, is it appropriate to consider divestment of MTS?
Mr. Chairman, I would love to remain the CEO of this state agency, so I would not. But seriously, those questions were posed to us in the past, and especially the question of relevance. And what are you guys doing that private sector can't do, etc. To start with, Mr. Chairman, we provide employment for a large portion of Trinidad and Tobago. And I dare say we provide employment from a respectable point of view, that our cleaners, our janitors, our security workers, they feel empowered and they feel emotionally attached to this organization. They are permanently employed. And by and large, they come from catchment areas, that single mothers, single families, low income. And I think we provide human service in that area for employment. With respect to mission critical buildings, and let me go back there. There are, at any point in time, we interact with about 300,000 persons in Trinidad and Tobago. And our clients are the the Hall of Justice and most of the courts, the police stations, BIR, TT Post, and some critical clients that if we are not careful and it is in the wrong hands, and dissident groups find ways and means to put security officers in firms that are not recruiting properly, then the country can have a national security risk. It is very important that these mission critical buildings remain with the oversight of a state agency like MTS to provide national security for Trinidad and Tobago. Notwithstanding that, I will also say, given our market share is about $550 million, Mr. Chairman, we compete in a market space that prevents the escalation of prices to go beyond a certain place. Because I'm afraid that if we are out of the market space, the security bill and the janitorial bills for the ministries and the government might be much larger than what it is today. So we keep a check on the pricing system, being competitive and ensuring that the market space remains. So I would say from that simple 3-point analysis that MTS is poised to serve the country and the state from a state agency perspective, as opposed to a private sector perspective.
Thank you for those answers. I very much appreciate them. And now that they're on the record. So I'm going to hand over to Member Lizama Leasing, and then I will give Member Mark the last round of questions. Ms. Lizama Leasing.
Thanks very kindly, Chairman. I just actually had one final question. I just wanted to ask, please, the MTS representatives, maybe CEO, to expand a little bit on the succession. He spoke about the succession planning, and I just wanted to hear some more about that, please, in going forward. Because it's very interesting to hear about succession planning in these environments.
Member, can I ask the Divisional Manager HR to expand, Ms. Hussain?
Part of our strategic plan, the first strategic plan, we focused on building capacity. And one of the exercises that we did is succession planning, so that we were able to itemize exactly, just through succession planning, when persons would be retiring, how we would develop some of the persons coming up, and where we would need to look through external recruitment to build the capacity. So at present, we have about 14 key vacancies that we are actively advertising or we are actively headhunting to fill. And that is in anticipation of persons retiring in the next 3 to 5 years. So, ma'am, I don't know if I answered.
And can I ask you, please, very often we find
We didn't hear you, Member. Member, I think your mic is on mute. I don't know if we've lost you.
Chairman, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Sorry, I just had a little lag with my internet. Thanks very much, Ms. Hossain. Very often we find when people are retiring, sometimes they take with them institutional knowledge, and a lot of the information is reposed within the person who was the substantial portfolio holder. So can I ask, is there an MTS where institutional knowledge doesn't go out with the retiree, but there's some data mining or some process or some sort of system in place to ensure that practices, procedures, and institutional knowledge is preserved within the institution?
You can answer. Ms. Hussain, can you answer?
We have a management structure where we have executive management and layers of management, so that we have monthly reporting as well as the CEO reports to the board. So the institutional knowledge is there documented through those processes. I don't know, see if you want to add to that.
The chairman would prefer an answer also.
Yeah, what I would say is that the first port of call for filling those vacancies will be internal. And we are in the process of having identified when and at what time someone is due to retire. We're looking at building capacity within the organization to fill those posts. So a lot of the institutional knowledge will stay within the organization and not, or will reside in those people who already will take up these positions.
Thank you very kindly. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you, Member. Member Mark, you will have the last set of questions. Member Mark, you have to unmute.
Yes, are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions I'd like to pose to the team. I would like to ask one, as it relates to occupational safety and health, I was a bit concerned that this very important company that is doing an extremely good job has had to find itself in some difficulties and in some difficult waters, or dangerous waters, I should say. When I read on page 18 of their submission that they had some 21 cases of late reporting of accidents on the prescribed Form 3 outside the 4-day period as mandated under the OSH Act. Now, I know that maybe one of the challenges, Mr. Chairman, that this company may have faced is simply getting money to buy the necessary equipment. That might be a challenge that they are faced with, but I do not want to speculate. I just want to find out from them what was some of the factors generating this particular development and what measures will be taken in order to mitigate and, if not eliminate, such transgressions in the future. That is the first area I'd like them to clarify.
Thank you very much, Member. Mr. Chairman and members, we would have had some problems in the past with respect to late reporting. Given the size of MTS throughout Trinidad and Tobago, sometimes if an accident takes place in a remote area, the mechanism to get it up and report it properly did not work according to our plan. When this was brought to our attention, we would have put things in place to resolve this. And I would ask Ms. Hussein this department is under Ms. Hussein actually, and I would ask her to say what she did to deal with this matter.
So the numbers look large, 21 cases. Put it in perspective of the population of MTS though. The 21 cases were simply late reporting outside the 4-day period. Now, what happens a lot of the time, and in many of these cases, is that the employee was injured and they would have gotten leave less than 4 days. So we would not have had to report the incident, because once somebody does not have more than 3 days, it is not reportable. But we've had circumstances, and again, I want you to put it in perspective of the population of MTS. So we would have had cases of 21 persons who would have come back out to work, but then had a relapse, so that they would have had to take more leave. Now, when that happens and it exceeds the 3-day period, we would have to report it to OSHA. What we've done is that, because we've been cited, of course, for late reporting, what we have done is put in place where we would append a report or a letter correspondence to the OSH agency carefully explaining the situation that we were faced. So the form does not have that information on it. Why the matter is being reported late, it does not ask for that information, so we would have supplemented that information. And in some cases, what we're doing is we're just going ahead and reporting. So even though the legislation says 3 days and more, we are going ahead and reporting it if it's what we consider to be a major incident. So just in case more leave is taken.
Okay. The other area I wanted to clarify with Mr. Ratan Singh deals with the absence. I would imagine that you may have some challenges. You may want to share with us what are those challenges. And that has to do with the absence of a risk management policy, which has been outstanding for some time now, a fraud policy, and a whistleblower policy. Now, I don't know what are the challenges the company is faced with, why these critical policy measures have not been developed and formally established and operationalized. So you need to provide this committee with some guidance, some perspective, and how do you see the future as it relates to the establishment of these policies? Because MTS, after all, is a very huge state entity with over 6,000 employees, and you want to make sure that you have certain policies in place to mitigate any untoward developments. So I just would like to get the perspective of the CEO on these policies that remain non-existent. Can I get a response, Mr. Ratansi?
Member, I will ask the Corporate Secretary, if you don't mind, to respond to it.
Member, with regard to the risk management policy, we have not had the cause to actually put that into a policy to date because of the fact that our internal audit department has been a very rigorous measure for this area. And the annual audit plan that is done by the internal auditor and approved by the audit committee of the board on an annual basis, that is then brought to the board for approval as well. So that annual audit plan essentially reviews the areas of risk within the company, and that is used as the measure for any areas of risk, which is brought to the board's attention on a monthly basis through the audit committee of the board. That is managed through the audit committee, that plan, and the activities of that plan. And as I said, it's reported to the board on a monthly basis. With regard to the fraud policy, similarly, we have not found the need to do a specific fraud policy, given that the areas of fraud are well covered within the company's existing policies in the employee handbook, the security handbook, and several of our HR policies as well. With regard to the whistleblower policy, we do have a draft that we are reviewing. However, in light of the fact that there are whistleblower elements to the recent Public Procurement Act, as well as a draft whistleblower legislation that the government has been entrained to bring, we want to make sure that our policy is in line with any existing legislation or legislation that is imminent. And so that's why we have not confirmed that policy to date.
Now, guide me on this one, if my memory does not serve me right. Is the establishment of a risk management policy and a fraud policy, and I understand your point about the whistleblower policy. You want to get some legislative framework to probably give you some legitimacy to provide some kind of legal clothing to this particular policy. May I ask whether in the annual state enterprises performance monitoring manual, are these policies provided in that particular manual for all state entities to have established? And if that is so, would you have spoken to the Minister of Finance to see if this question of the risk management policy and the fraud policy could be at least not addressed at this time, given the circumstances? Could you clarify for us whether risk management policy, fraud policy constitute part of the state enterprise performing monitoring mechanism or manual?
Member, I'm not certain whether it forms part of the manual, but we do report to Ministry of Finance on a monthly basis through our minutes as well, our board minutes, and they have not raised any concerns with us regarding any of these areas.
All right, well, let me go on. There's another area I'd like to raise. One of the challenges that MTS outlined on page 20 of their submission dealt with what is called the uneconomical charge out rates. Now, I saw on page 23 where you sought to elaborate, particularly as it relates to the Ministry of Education, that really provides you with 60% of revenues, given what I've seen here. May I ask what is being done through the various arms of government to provide MTS vis-a-vis the Ministry of Education with a more economical charge rate, particularly when you take into account this particular hourly rate has been in existence since 2006, so for a few years well. So can I ask for some clarification on this matter and as to where we are going with it?
Thank you very much, Member, Mr. Chairman and members. So since 2006 to now, MTS would have had several union negotiations settled. So the rates for wages would have risen. We would have had 2 or 3 minimum wages act coming into place. So all of those added to the wage rate of MTS. The wage rate of MTS, therefore, would have risen to a large portion, more than what we can afford to bear. So that's why our charge-out rate went to $32 an hour. Our charge-out rate for the Ministry of Education remains at $24 an hour. There is no way we could continue with that rate. That rate needs to change. We have brought it to the attention of the Ministry of Education no less than lots of times. We have brought it to the attention lots of times. We have brought it to the attention of the Ministry of Public Utilities. We have brought it to the ministries before them. We have brought it to the attention of all and sundry. The matter, I understand, is gaining some attention between the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Public Utilities. That may form a cabinet note to go to the cabinet. I am not aware at this point where exactly the matter is. But MTS is not going to leave this matter alone. This matter needs to be rectified.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask the Permanent Secretary acting in the Ministry of Public Utilities to provide us with some guidance on this matter, please?
Well, the matter has been placed before the Cabinet, and at this point in time, our latest information is that it went to the Finance and General Purposes Committee. We will seek to see whether we can get an update, but that is the last position we have. So the ministry did take a note seeking to have approval for the Ministry of Education to upgrade the charge rate, as the CEO would have indicated, to the new cost. and that matter was sent to the FMG.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I think this is another one that we have to monitor very carefully to ensure that this very important organization is able to get the financial wherewithal to conduct its business. And that charge rate is a very important rate, that because if they are paying $32 per hour and they are receiving $24 from the ministry, I mean, I said that is totally unacceptable, and they have been receiving this since 2006. So that is really a recipe for disaster, and we can't continue along that line. So that's an area, Mr. Chairman, I would like to suggest that we monitor and keep very much at the front of our radar. The final area I'd like to clarify, once again, I didn't get sufficient clarification, so I'm coming back to the question. This $400 million bond, can I get from the Ministry of Public Utilities or the Ministry of Finance, seeing that they underwrite or they underwrote and guarantee this loan? Can they tell us which bank or banks underwrote this refinancing of this $400 million bond, and what was the rate of interest and the duration of this loan in terms of the refinance loan, Mr. Chairman, so we can be clear in our minds about this? Either the Ministry of Finance or Public Utilities, or if I can go back to MTS, somebody must know what this entails. It cannot be in the air. We need answers.
Chairman and member, the guarantee of the loans falls under another department within the Ministry of Finance, the Debt Management Division. So we will undertake to provide the information in writing after we get the required information and provide it to the committee.
All right, thank you so very much. Mr. Chairman, I think I'll pause at this time and turn back the proceedings to you.
Thank you. Member Indar Singh had a question.
Thank you very much, Chairman. In the context of our continued line of questioning and so on, I don't know who will take this, but in relation to paid 5 and procurement procedures, I see that MTS has appointed a chief procurement officer who has participated in all of the training provided by the Office of the Procurement Regulator over the past few years and so on. And at present, their tenders are managed through the legal and procurement department. But given where we are in relation to this piece of legislation, though I have my views on the gutting of the legislation and so on, will a procurement officer alone suffice at MTS, given the number of contracts and the business you are involved in? Do you see the need to probably establish a department and beef it up with additional personnel and so on?
Well, member, currently the Chief Procurement Officer is the head of a procurement department. So there is a department that's existing already, with which he is the head of it.
And all the handbooks and all these things that
we are not completing our handbooks and our guidelines as yet. We are in the process of finalizing and those
arrangements.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And also, this issue about the last time a valuation was done on your property and so on, CEO, that is something that you need to keep on the radar. And I see that you have indicated in your submission that once adequate funding becomes available, we intend to embark upon this revaluation exercise. I do not know if you have in your possession that it was done in 2009. What was the valuation of your property at that point in time? You could guide us if possible.
Thank you, member. I would ask my CFO to prefer an answer on that question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, member. Whilst the international accounting standards dictates that we value the property regularly, given the financial constraints, the high level of debtors, the cash flow, we found it more prudent to channel these funds into paying salaries, statutory deductions, corporation tax, VAT, and so on, than to revalue the building. We have been in communication with our auditor, and he has given us some consideration in this matter. But as soon as we acquire the funding, we hope to follow that standard.
If you don't have, saying that it was in 2009 and you don't have the information readily available, with the passage of time, you probably could advise the committee. And I continue to take comfort in the fact that you seem to be a people's organization in terms of refocusing your available finances to the payment of salaries and NIS and other statutory obligations and so on. And given the environment where we are existing in and the impact that it has had on families and incomes and so on, I want to commend you all for what you are doing.
Thank you, member.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, member. Well, I think that will bring an end to the questioning. As we draw to a conclusion, just to remind MTS that we will be probably writing you for details of the remaining loans, a copy of the energy report, for your comments on the security bill, and as member Indar Singh just asked about, details about the 2009 valuation. With the Ministry of Finance, we would like to get information regarding the practice on loans, the accounting standards being followed, and then more recently, the information on the loans that you were asked about. So may I now invite closing comments from MTS and then the two ministries.
Thank you, Chairman. It really has been a pleasure reporting to the JSC, and I wish to thank you and appreciate the commendations that you have expressed regarding the operations of MTS. I think MTS was originally built on a very solid platform, and while some systems may become outdated, the policy and the practice and the culture of the organization is one to meet the commitments that are required of MTS. And it is a matter now of modernizing systems and procedures. It has always been a people organization, a people-oriented organization, and it continues to be so. So it's no surprise that the CFO expressed his preference to pay people rather than look after matters like valuating a building. These exercises are really very good for us because it brings together a fulsome report over a protracted period of time. And so it in itself gives us clarity on where we were and where we want to be. Although we may do that for our strategic plans, this probing and investigating highlights areas that we need to look at. Particularly, I am particularly interested in the debt, the monies owed to the organization and the fiduciary responsibility of the board and its members, and how we deal with that in a statute situation, etc. So thank you for that. Thank you to all members for all the concerns and questions raised, and I hope that we have met your expectations in our responses. And I look forward to fulfilling those the answers to those questions that you've asked. And I want to wish you all a safe, healthy, and happy 22. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CEO. You okay? PS. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to say thank you to the committee for today's meeting, for the recommendations that we are coming forward. The Ministry of Public Utilities will continue to support MTS in its mandate and also in trying to be able to mitigate some of the fallout that has come from, debtors not paying MTS. We thank you for your suggestions in that regard, and we want to commit to continuing to support MTS, of course, along with our other stakeholders and the Ministry of Finance. So thank you very much today.
Thank you, Ministry of Finance.
Thank you, Chairman and members. I thought the meeting went well this morning. There were a plethora of issues raised. I think MTS did well in answering, if not all. I commend him on that. I also commend the CEO on the way he's steering this company against the backdrop of a 600 million plus receivables. On the flip side, the Ministry of Finance will continue to do its part in monitoring the state enterprise and ensuring continued compliance in accordance with the manual. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to thank all of you very much for your contributions today. They will be very useful for this committee in its future work on the subject and in drawing up a report and recommendations for action to the relevant authorities. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our business today, and this meeting is now suspended. In closing, may I thank MTS, the media, the viewing and listening audience. Good day.